if we have learned something during this pandemic, is that traditional assessment is not working. Students need to use more engaging activities and be able to be active in their learning if they want to learn something. So we, as professors, as teachers, educators, we need to find new ways of assessing our students and understanding whether they are learning something and they are acquiring skills. In this video, I'm going to go through different strategies and approaches to assess your students in a creative manner and in an engaging way. Hello, my name is Maria Ferrero. Welcome to my channel. Today we are going to talk about different ways you can assess your students and their knowledge and their skills in an innovative, engaging way. So if you want to know more about how to assess students in the hybrid classroom, stay tuned and keep watching. Come on, we all know that traditional assessment, proctoring, testing really doesn't work and is far from being an indicator of students' intelligence, knowledge, skills, or effort. And it's nothing to do with their abilities to perform on these tests or how prepared they are to work in life. So we have to think of better ways of assessing our students. And I have used some of the approaches that I'm going to talk about in this video, and I found them really, really effective for being aware of what we learn. And I think that the students, even if at the beginning it can be a bit difficult for them to start because it takes a lot of work and effort, then at the end they realize that finally they are learning something and that they can take that home and apply it in their real life. So the first approach is discussions and Socratic seminars. So there's a way that you can start the conversation with students on the online or hybrid classroom to see if they understand the concepts, and they can do it through reflection and being able to apply those concepts into more developed discussions and debates. You can ask specific open-ended questions or start with a topic to lead a mindful conversations with your students. So you can do this in two ways. Either you are in the online classroom and you can do it synchronously by just starting a question and asking students to pop in and give kind of their knowledge about the topic or the questions, and then someone else has to continue with the discussion, and you just need them to discuss and for a specific amount of time, so you can give them rules and share how they are supposed to respond. So for example, it can be that you give them a short time that they have to use to respond and to add value to the debate. You can also ask them to share ideas with using text or images or videos to enhance the discussion. And there is also a way of doing this asynchronously. You can start, for example, a board, whether in Wakelet or using Quora or Reddit or any other channel, where they can all meet, and at their own rhythm, they will add something to the discussion on the topic through different formats. So I really love using for this Wakelet because it's an application where you can kind of have collections of different media. It can be text, it can be videos, it can be images, and it's collaborative, and you can invite your students to have a conversation on a specific topic, and they can access and see what other students are saying. So this is a great way of having that done asynchronously. But you can also do it synchronously, whether it's in the physical classroom or in the in the online classroom where they have to talk and just try to add their knowledge to the topic and their opinion and their ideas. What is important here is that you give them kind of the rules and how it's going to be assessed. So what are the expectations that you have as a professor in that specific topic? So you can say, for example, that you want them to at least build up 2 new ideas, or you have to give them, for example, a limit of time where they have to speak. And you can say, okay, I want everyone to speak about the topic, and you have to add something new or try to link to the last discussion from your peer and continue to develop the conversation there. Number 2, explanatory videos. So I use this a lot with my students. I usually use Flipgrid as a platform where we share videos, but you can use whatever platform you prefer. You have Loom, you have YouTube, you have Instagram, or even if you have Moodle or Canvas, you can do it without having a specific channel for your group. So what I do is that I start with a prompt on my Flipgrid channel. For example, I invite my students, I put a prompt about a topic or an assignment or whatever, and then they just have to respond with a video. And what is interesting about this is that they don't only get to respond and show how much you know about the topic, but also they get to use their creativity and the skills they have in digital and editing videos, because they have plenty. I don't have that skills, but they use that, and they are going to use filters, they are going to use music, and they are really able to create amazing videos to respond to a topic. So it's not only fun for them because they are using skills that they really love to use, but also because they are reflecting on their knowledge and on the skills they have, on the concept that they've learned. So what you can do is, so you can just start with a prompt and ask your students to respond with a video. What is interesting about Flipgrid, and this is why I use it, is that students can comment on other colleagues' video, on their classmates' video. They can also like the videos. They can respond with new videos. And me as a professor, I can respond to the videos with either a comment, but also with a video, like trying to say, okay, this is awesome. And I use it also as a way for them to reflect on a specific subject. So I ask them to create explanatory videos of a concept or a topic that we saw in class. And they can do it like either through animations or they speaking and so on. But the idea is that you give them like kind of the free road so that they put their creativity to work. But what is important is to tell them what is it that you expect from them. So I usually ask them that I want videos that are no longer than 2 minutes. And then in these 2 minutes, they have to be as engaging as possible, and they have to actually help their classmates learn about that topic. So that's another way where you can really evaluate the skills and the knowledge that the students acquire during your course. Number 3 is using self-assessment and retrospective learning to assess their process of learning during your courses. So this is something that you usually do in the design and agile methodology, using retrospective learning to see what you've learned during the week. So what I do is, again, you can do this through videos or through audio or simply through text, is I ask my students to just tell me what they've learned and reflect on what they learned for the last sessions or the last lectures that we have together. So usually what I do it is that at the end of the week, I'm going to just post a video on my Flipgrid channel, or I can do it also on Moodle with the just a question where they have to respond with text. And I ask them to reflect on what they've learned during the week. So usually I tell them to tell me 3 things they've learned during the last lessons. They have to tell me also what worked well for them, what did they enjoy during the class, during the lecture. It can be on the content itself, but it can be also in the way the lecture was given or the way they received the learning and the content. I asked them also what didn't work well and what did they find challenging. So this is really important for me because I get feedback kind of directly about how they feel about the content, how far are they in terms of knowledge or expectations, if they are struggling or not. And also they really get to be aware of what are their limits and what are the challenges they are facing so that they can, improve for the next time. And then linked to that, I ask them how they will do to improve for the next session or for the next week so that they can come up to the same level, or let's say just get to the expectations that they have and that I have. I think this is really important because they also learn to be critical about their learning process, and they make that makes them responsible for what they are learning. And it's nothing is better than assessing yourself and being able to be objective of how you are learning, but also how much you're learning. Number 4 is blogging. I think that one of the challenges I see a lot with students is that they really don't know how to write, or maybe they haven't had the opportunity to write a lot. Because when they write, they do it in an academic way, mainly, or they are more focused on the content itself, but not in the way they produce this content. So I use blogging and journaling as a way to make them learn about a specific topic and reflect on the topic, but also it's an opportunity for them to gain skills in writing, which is a really important skill in the real life. And they learn to communicate better and thinking about the audience they will have. So there are plenty of ways you can put this in place. You can either decide to create a blog for your class, and you can do that through different applications like Wakelet or even WordPress or anything that would allow students to create their blog post and share it with the class. But you can also encourage them to create their own blogs and not just create an entry for your specific class and a specific topic, but to kind of engage in the blogging development, and they create stories about other things other than your class. So I really use this not only because I think it's a great way to learn how to write and to communicate, but because they can also learn about other things, like, for example, how you can improve the SEO techniques in blogging. How can you analyze your audience and see what types of keywords you should use, and what is the performance of your entries, and so on. So they learn also kind of different concepts in digital marketing and online communication, which I think is really important. So there are plenty applications or platforms that you can use. You have Wakelet, again, as I said, you have Blogger, you have WordPress also. And I usually use Medium because I think it's like the best platform for bloggers to be. And they really enjoy it. So at the beginning, I see that they struggle a bit because they don't know what is to blog. I think they follow a lot of bloggers and so on, but it's really difficult for them, like, to be in the skin of a blogger and do their job. But once they get into this, at the end they really like it, and they can come up with like really engaging stories. And not just talking about a subject academically, but also trying to transform that subject into something that an audience and let's say that a general public will like. So I think that's also a really an awesome strategy for evaluating skills and make them acquire new skills. Strategy number 5 is podcasting. I've been using podcasting with my students for over 3 years, and I have to say that I think one of the activities that I love the most, because it covers many skills that today are really important for students and of course for the real life, because they learn how to communicate effectively. They learn also how to structure communication and how to structure podcasts. They learn also how to edit audio and video. They learn also how to do reaching audience and how to talk to a public and many other things. So the good thing about podcasting is that you can ask them to follow different formats. So you can ask them, for example, to have interviews with people or guests, have the guest in their episodes. You can also ask them to be kind of a discussion podcast where two students are going to talk about a specific subject. So everything depends on what is it that you want to do. I usually give them a lot of freedom on the format. I give them only rules in terms of, for example, how long should an episode be. So usually it's between 5 and 10 minutes, depending on what is it, what are the subjects that they are going to treat. And I ask them to work in groups, because of course there is going to be a lot of work behind the podcast. In addition, in also structuring the script and so on. So the back end work is kind of too much if you have only one student, and also because afterwards, if you're going to evaluate, it's not that easy when you have just one student per episode. I discovered recently a really cool application that lets you do a podcast in your classroom, like in a safe way, meaning that you don't need to care about distribution and having different sources where students pause their episode. So it's called Synth. You find the link on the video. Is a really cool application where you have audio channels, and you can invite your students to those channels where they can post audios of their own. So I do that for our podcast. And what I do is that I create a first episode where I give the instructions and when I explain how we are going to work and all the rules and so on. And then they respond with their episode, again, for 5 or 10 minutes, and they really have to do it on their own. And the application is really easy to use. So they don't need to care about a lot about editing and having skills or knowledge in different software. So I'm going to do another video on how to use this software. So stay tuned if you want to know a little bit more about GoSynth. But again, podcasting is a great way to evaluate your students and their skills. And even if you don't use this application, you can also do it through Anchor or Spotify or whatever. But then you have to take care of the distribution. But you can also do it with YouTube and have students post their own audio or audio file on Moodle or Canva, depending on which is your school using. But it's a really interesting way to have a podcast created by your classroom, also because you can reuse that content with new classes, and it's just a win-win, because other students will use it for them to learn and for getting more knowledge and more experience, and also because it's a way for students to learn about the skills of podcasting and creating digital content and so on. Okay, that was it for today. I hope you enjoyed watching this video on strategies to assess your students in the hybrid classroom in a more engaging way. All the links are available in the description of the video, and you can also access my article on different techniques and assessment methods for online and hybrid classroom. So don't forget to follow me and subscribe to my channel, and please click on the thumbs up. See you soon. Bye bye.